This is Father Bonaventure Chapman.
And this is Father Jacob-Bertrand Janczyk.
Welcome to Godsplaining. Thanks to all those who support us. If you enjoy the show, please consider making a monthly donation, or more frequently, on Patreon. Be sure to like, subscribe to Godsplaining wherever you listen to your podcasts. Father Jacob-Bertrand Janczyk, here we are again.
Yep.
Yes or no? Disney.
Yes.
Yeah, qualified, yes, okay. Dear listeners, we're talking about Disney here. I wanted to jump in on it because I don't know anything about your position about Disney. So we're going to talk about the goods and the bads of it, but it's the best to just jump in on this thing and talk about it.
Surprises.
There shall be surprises. I love that line from C.S. Lewis, Till We Have Faces, I think, when he talks about, and in heaven there'll be surprises, like people that you didn't think would be there actually will be there, and the people are like, oh my gosh, of course they'd be there. It's all just rampant speculation, but C.S. Lewis is great.
I probably won't be surprised.
He's kind of Disney-ish. No, because you were going to judge on the 12 tribes of the apostles. But do you remember, before we get in talking about particularly Disney, which I'm sure I know some of our listeners are excited about, not everyone's excited about, but they should be. What was your what's your earliest memory of Disney? Did you grow up in a Disney family?
I would say Disney family, no, but we had Disney, we grew up with Disney movies, and I very distinctly remember, those, the VHS, Disney VHS,
yes.
They came in kind of the squishy kind of cases,
yeah,
and they had
yeah.
that plastic smell to them and stuff.
Yeah.
I remember that very distinctly from a young age. We watched Disney movies a lot.
All the time.
We went to Disney World.
Yeah.
I was there the first time when I was in second grade. So I'm the oldest of three. So I was second grade. Brother was first grade. Sister must have been not kindergarten, maybe pre-K, whatever.
Okay.
So we did Disney then, but we weren't we weren't crazy Disney.
So
beyond
you weren't well, they used to have car antennas. They don't have these more, I don't think.
I know what you're talking about.
But the little guy in the top, the Mickey Mouse thing. Okay, that's great. All right, but you went to Disney World or Disneyland?
World. I've never been to land, but I've been to Disney World 5 or 6 times.
Five or six times.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
for
great.
different reasons, though. Not all vacation things. So
on business.
So in college, our conference I forgot how many year rotation. Every sport had their conference championship held in Disney at every a 3 or 4 year rotation. So I had raced and went for that.
Yeah.
High school, I think we went because for a sports thing, a running thing, and then high school singing, choir stuff. We went a couple times down for stuff there. So it was school trips.
Did you ever sing and run at the same time in competition?
Not in that manner.
Oh darn, that'd be so cool. It's like a biathlon. Running and singing.
It would be a surprise.
That would be a real surprise. Many surprises. Okay, all right. And what was now in Disney World? What was your favorite world? You could say, you Magic Kingdom man, Epcot Center guy.
I think as far as the Disney experience, Magic Kingdom.
All right.
As far as the ride experience, I don't know. I do like roller coasters and those sort of things. So
Not
Magic
really.
Kingdom. That was a statement. Not a question.
Oh, I thought you said, do you?
I said I do.
Oh, I didn't hear the I. I never hear your I. Yeah.
Yeah. I do. So, and there is less of that at Disney, but as far as at Magic Kingdom, but as far as the experience of Disney, I remember the one roller, Space Mountain is in Magic Kingdom. And when I went in second grade, we were so pumped. My brother and I were so pumped to go on the ride. And, we got in line, and as we were getting in line, I was getting really scared, nervous, because have you been you're inside the ride as you're in line, right? Yeah. And I'm getting scared, and we're getting towards the front, and I lose it, I start crying, I don't want to do it, but my dad, my brother, and my sister is too little. My mom doesn't do roller coasters. Yeah, we waited in line forever, and my dad was tough.
We're doing
it. On, because if I weren't going to go on, then no one was. He's not going to send me out, whatever.
Wow,
so I got on. Common
good, private good. You learned very early on.
Yeah, he was
that's great.
You're getting on, and I loved it. Of course.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, that's great. No, Disney is, the space. I remember when I was on Space Mountain one time, someone had hit their head or something, or there'd been some sort of injury on it, and so they turned on the lights.
Oh no, that ruins everything.
It was weird, and it actually felt uncomfortable because those are really close. I'm glad I don't usually see those things on the tracks. Gosh. It felt very bizarre.
Yeah, we when we were there, I think for our cross country conference champs, we like that at the evening after the race for like the award ceremony and the big banquet dinner, whatever, was in, is it MGM? What has the big white ball? Like head.
That's Epcot.
Okay, so it was in Epcot.
Yep.
Right? Is that where Tower of Terror is?
That's MGM, yeah.
Okay, so we were in MGM.
Okay, yeah.
And we like the banquet was like, because right, you have Tower of Terror and like the Rock and Roller Coaster, like the Aerosmith coaster, they're right next to each other. So our banquet was like in that courtyard there, and then the park was closed. It was in the evening, so we had full access to those 2 rides like all evening.
Oh,
it was just the 2 rides, but like
that's enough.
You could just get off and get on. It was awesome.
Wow.
So it was just like the athletes and coaches and stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Super cool.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got good Disney under your belt there, you could say. We grew up. Our family didn't grow up as a Disney family per se, but we started doing vacations there. And when I was in middle school and early high school, I suppose.
I cannot picture you in Disney.
See, I love Disney. Just a warning to the listeners. I'm a big Disney fan. I love it. We'll get there. But I'm all for it.
Okay.
I think it's great for reasons we'll mention in a second. But we used to go, because Disney. I loved Epcot Center, the little world showcase and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm already there right now. I'm zoned out. I'm like Japan one with the koi, or the Canadian one with the little like outdoor rocks and the ponds and stuff. So my brother would like plan. We'd talk about where we were going to go next year when we were at the Disney thing.
Wow, this was like your yearly trip.
Oh yeah, yeah. Wow. I grew up. Yeah, this was the only thing. It was this or an apples during Christmas that we had to look forward to. No,
apple.
But no, we did Disney. And then when I as an Episcopalian ordinand, I lived down. I taught in Oviedo, right next to Orlando. So I lived right near Disney.
How often would you go?
Well, not as often as you imagine because it's expensive.
Yeah.
But the school had a thing where high schools in the Florida area, they get a Disney night or something, and it's all nights. The park goes from like 8 p.m. until 8 a.m. or something. And every high school student pulls up here. And I was teaching a small evangelical Baptist school. And so we were going to Disney. And of course, many of the people that were going there and locked in all night were not evangelical Baptists. So I had to like tell the kids, do not go on these. See that place over there with the room? Don't go in there. But I was locked in for a night. And I don't like roller coasters, but it was nice to be there. And just kind of, I have to say, the best experience is the kind of Main Street,
Magic Kingdom.
Parade every night, Okay. So I love Disney. I don't think my sister, I don't remember Disney princess stuff. You probably remember a little bit of that because you're your sister, but all right. So Disney is this thing that I think everyone has some experience with it, whether good or ill. And it seems, at least initially, a kind of quintessential American kind of brand. I mean, it's like Starbucks and McDonald's, right? Except they're food things, and Disney is this bigger project we want to get into. And you just reminded me that it's Walt Disney in 1923. I think, have you seen that first Steamboat Willie or whatever, Steamboat Mickey?
I've seen clips of it, but I've not like sat and watched it.
If you've seen it for 5 seconds, you've probably seen it all. Yeah. This starting with the mouse kind of thing, and Walt Disney's vision for Disney and like Disneyland and all this is that a place where families could go together and share. So that Disney's kind of main focus is having things that are good for both the young and the old, so that you don't have to like, well, let's let the kid do his thing, but like everyone kind of is involved. So it has this transgenerational sort of feel, and there's different aspects of trans involved in Disney, but that's the transgenerational feel is one of them. I think it's an quintessentially American thing, although they have Euro Disney and such, right?
They do.
But what if someone asked?
And in other places too, I think. Right?
I think Japan, I think has Disney. Africa, maybe, who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
Antarctica probably does not have Disney.
That would probably be a safe bet.
Okay, yeah. But so what do you when someone asks you like, what is Disney? What does it mean? Before we ask the question of like, what is it good for? Like, what do you think about it?
Okay, so here let me like give you part of the thought process that's going on. I'm battling a few things as I think about this. And one of them is that I like to be a naysayer and like nitpick things that are bad. And I think with everything you can always find good or whatever less than good things, but I like to tend to kind of draw out the things that are less than good and then define the whole thing by that.
Yes.
Which is not a good thing always, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is like what Disney are we talking about?
Got it.
Because I think that Disney has gone through a metamorphosis of its own at different points.
Yeah, sure.
And like the Disney that I grew up on or like that we grew up on is very different than the Disney that is today.
All right, we'll do utopian Disney and current Disney.
Yeah, so like utopian Disney, or like the heyday of Disney, when like those, all the sort of like great animated movies were coming out. The Lion King, The Little Mermaid. Obviously, they weren't inventing, but like putting these out. Lion King, Little Mermaid,
Fantasia.
No. Beauty and the Beast. I mean, at the far end,
Snow White.
Yeah, and at the far end is like Mulan, like that kind of Pocahontas,
just
like that generation
of
the
shark.
Yeah. I give it a thumbs up.
Yeah,
I do. I think that the way that Disney, at least with respect to the movies, was able to take either sort of stories, classic stories, or themes, or use like stories that, I mean, most of their movies and stuff are stories that existed before that then they kind of put their own twist on and make it. I think it's good storytelling. I think it's generally like good music. It's good like art in the sense of like the animation and that sort of thing. But I think most importantly, like what it teaches is it still adheres to like the right sort of lanes of like good and evil, and doesn't mix those sort of things. Now, like obviously sometimes the heroes go through their like crisis of whatever, and but the like even though it's a cliche, I think it's a good thing that like the good guy wins, and the bad guy loses, or like the love story comes true, like because those
though that's I like that. That's the narrative structure and the focus on the black and whiteness. We wouldn't, because the minute say black and white, well, the world's not black and white, but there is the sense in which good and evil are distinct. Good is not evil, evil is not good, and that when you're educating children, they learn best through stories. Most of us love stories, and that you need to imprint in them some of these messages for all sorts of educational reasons.
Right.
And Disney has that way, the traditional trad Disney has this way of telling these stories about good and evil, love, and that have the nice dramatic arc. They think through those things, but at the end of the day, the world is a good place, right? They have this kind of affirmation vision, which for a lot of people, I mean, for children, it's necessary for them to actually go forward with their parents, and then the bigger vision of it. So I think the utopian Disney is not a bad description, that because utopias are what children are about in a sense. They're dreamers. They want to have this kind of vision, and you're supposed to help them imagine these ways. It's also impressed me in how much staying power there is in those simple images and stories. I was just with my niece and brother and sister-in-law a little bit ago, and they were getting in the Disney movie stage just a little bit.
How old is
she
now?
She's now 5 and a half or something. And so just in the and they started watching the Robin Hood. Have you seen the animated version? This is 1972. And I was just watching. We were just watching 10 minutes or something at night before she went to bed. We were watching this, and it's amazing how much I remember. Like I couldn't have drawn it out, but the minute I saw it, I can remember exactly what's happening.
Is it like Maid Mariam's like caretaker? She's like a big chicken, like a hen, right?
Like a wolf, yes. She's like a fox. She's a fox.
She is, but like her.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
like her guardian or whatever. Is like
exactly.
A big right.
Yep, that's right. And then the bear is Little John or something, and the cane is the lion,
right?
And the snake is his sister. But it's amazing. I haven't thought about that movie in 25 years or something. But it's all there.
Yeah.
And so how much in the background is involved in that stuff, the encoding, you could say, of this.
Yep.
And it seems like in our society, this is true for cowboy movies too, we've gotten afraid of telling black and white stories because life is complicated. I noticed this with cowboy black hat, white hat cowboy movies, like 3:10 to Yuma, I think was the first cowboy movie I saw. Like it was not clear who the bad guy was.
Yeah.
When the old 3:10 to Yuma, it's very clear who the bad guy is. And I think sometimes with our kids' stories, we start to tell these kind of complex, layered things as if they can know that, but it's not true. I mean, kids' world in some ways should be a simpler kind of world, right?
Yeah, well, even if it is the case, which it probably is the case, that like life is more complicated than just like this is good, this is bad, and just
Certainly
pick one and do it, right? But in order for people to begin to learn to navigate how to, to navigate those complicated situations. You can't hope for somebody to begin to navigate those complicated situations if they don't have a sort of foundational understanding of the basics.
Yes.
Right. So like you have to build on something. You don't give somebody like a score of music who's never played an instrument before. You introduce them to like the scales and that sort of, and then they build until they're able to navigate something much more complex. And I think that that's the case with like, we're basically talking about it, but like the moral life of engaging with and making choices and decisions, and if we can't present, and this is what I think like classic kind of Disney of like the 80s, 90s kind of thing, like it did a good job of presenting in a beautiful way and in a way through art and music, like these classic stories of the human person.
Yeah.
Often told like through animal character or, not always, but that gave a sort of foundational reality of like, this is what we're after.
Yes.
In life.
It gave a sort of vision of the good life in some fashion in its own little fields.
Yeah.
And that simplicity point is, I think, important in that when we teach, for instance, physics, you took physics too, you start out with Newton's equation F equals ma, and then you work on that for a while, and then you add, as you go along to engineering, you add, more complexity to it, air friction, air resistance, all these, then you add derivatives and all. So you build out, but you're still, at the end of the day, it's still F equals ma that's structuring it,
right.
Although you're making it more complicated, of course. And oftentimes today, at least, it seems a critique about Disney and simplicity, those old-fashioned ones, it's not too complex, us versus them, this sort of thing. It gets rid of the idea that actually it is, at the end of the day, there is a simplicity to the moral life. How it's played out is difficult sometimes, but there is a good and evil, and that we have to start with one, good, and two, simple. Mm-hmm. And then you can build in the kind of complexity. Just like in the physics equation, you're going to build in a little complexity as you go add to things as you're more capable of it. You can't teach Hamiltonians and Lagrangians to high schoolers. They won't know what they're talking about. But you can teach them F equals ma in the basic algebraic physics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I think like beyond the movie realm, like the experience. Now, I haven't been to Disney in like, I don't know.
Godsplaining Retreat?
Maybe. I would say definitely since I've been to, so let's just say 15, 20 years. It's been a long time since I've been to Disney. Well, it was in college, so like 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what like the experience of going to Disney is now, a decade and a half later, but like growing up, even in high school and that sort of thing, and a couple of times I went in college, like going to the parks gives the experience in a sense of like, of that's experienced in the movies. Mm-hmm. It has this like kind of fantasy world, but it's also, there's some like root in like just like wholesome goodness, it seems, or there was. Maybe there still is. I just haven't been there, so I can't like. But like even just like walking down Main Street in Magic Kingdom, like it's not totally fanciful where it's like this is unrelatable, but it's also not totally normal. Obviously, it's like the magic of Disney that kind of like weaves into the normalcy of what life is. So I think that's really awesome how like the in-person experience worked.
Yeah,
too.
that's a good point. Disney has this way of, it's magic, right? It's their kind of big thing. And it has a way of making magic or some magical sense. Like it's not doing real magic or anything, but there's some kind of fantasy about it that we can all step into. And I think people, again, I haven't been there in a number of years as well, but they can easily step into that. Now, here's an interesting point, and I hadn't thought too much about this, but as big as I am on Disney, and obviously the concerns about today, and we don't need to, as an episode, it's probably not need to go into, hey, here's the hit list of things that they're doing wrong, because it's just the hit list of what culture's doing wrong.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting point that I haven't thought about that much is Disney is a secular utopia. What I mean by that is not like Marxist kind of stuff or communist sort of kingdom in a way, but that has fantasy and magic and all of this, but from the beginning in a way, it has never had God or anything in there, right?
Yeah.
And which is in some ways striking that you can get away with kind of a beautiful, magical, flourishing sense without ever a sense of kind of a creator, or even anything. So what are we to make of the? Have you ever thought about like, wait a minute, there's someone missing in this story, and it's not just like the kind of Christ thing, but like the idea that there's a deeper, sense that the justice will be done at some point. There's a transcendence to it Disney has like an imminent eschatology, an imminent morality.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
This is unrelated, but very quickly, like another, and I'm thinking of two movies from this era too, like Aladdin is another great one. But then I'm thinking, like, what movies, as you're mentioning this, have any sort of mention of God? So another one that we hadn't mentioned is Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yes.
Has the church in it. And there's a song, like Esmeralda prays to God at some point in the beginning when she's seeking, it's like the song, I think, God Save the Outcast from towards, I think the beginning of the movie when she seeks sanctuary or at some point. But the church is not portrayed in a favorable light, and rightly so in that story anyways. Yeah. And then The Lion King, when Mufasa dies, Simba sees him later in the clouds.
Oh, yeah,
like that sort of like, but it's not God. All this, like your point stands. You know, I'm trying to think of like, are there like
other religious, what are the religious themes?
Yeah. But there really aren't. That's true.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's, I would be interested to like if there was some if Walt Disney had something to say about that, if that was just like if that was intentional in the sense of like an agnosticism or atheism, or if that was just like we're telling these stories that are written this kind of way and you can extrapolate to some sort of higher objective moral kind of thing, but it's not explicit in the story. I don't know.
Which and there's something you could think Jared Tolkien goes, oh my gosh, Walt Disney, that guy, don't blame me for not being explicit about my images. That guy didn't do anything with allegory. But I can imagine Walt Disney's like, no, the whole thing's about Christ dying on the cross. You're like, maybe.
Or not.
We'll see. But it's also the case that as a Christian brother told me when I was in high school, he said Christianity is an adult's religion. And I've always remembered that and thought, there's something kind of right about that to understand the meaning of Christianity is something you grow into, and it's something that you have to have a certain reasoning capacity. We recognize this with first, communions and such. I mean, you've just done this with recently at the parish, that there is this kind of, that before a certain level, you have symbols for it and such, and it's important to teach children to pray and things, but it's like not as required. It's not like you're failing the child if you've told them a beautiful story about good and evil,
right,
and you haven't told them about God. Because in a sense, for a child, he might actually not think there's anything different. Those just categories naturally go together. Whereas for us, we're so used to, it might be the case that we're so used to being like, look, good and evil, it's either with God or it's not involved at all. Whereas because we've been told that you could have it without having God, and we kind of were worried about that. Whereas children, I think, have a natural kind of sense of the transcendent, maybe, and maybe that's why it doesn't seem as weird for me that's not included.
Yeah.
Even though I would because there are like VeggieTales, for instance, that are very explicitly religious, and
are they? I've never watched it.
VeggieTales, it's evangelical.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
They tell a story of like Esther, the cucumber and all this kind of thing. This is if you're evangelical, you grew up watching VeggieTales.
Okay.
And that's fine, but it's a different thing.
Yeah.
I've
not gotten the sense from in Disney that it's, at least in this classic era, anti-God.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe Disney, that was his intention. Like, I don't know, but it's not kind of I've not gotten that sense myself.
Yeah, so. Yeah. So obviously, there's a lot of basic moral catechesis in Disney. What about the family aspects of it? Is Disney something you'd recommend to family?
As far as families watching it, or their portrayal of the family?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Families watching, I think yes, again, in this classic kind of sense, you kind of said or alluded to earlier, that like everything else in our culture that has become totally woke and nonsensical, Disney has certainly done that in ways. So I would caution against those kind of things. If we're losing the sense of right and wrong, and if we're losing the sense of like truth, then it becomes a bit more problematic to just sit a kid down in front of Disney, whatever. As far as it's interesting too, though. Like, I think the portrayal of the family in Disney movies is very weak.
Mm-hmm.
The portrayal of particular familial relationships is quite strong, but the family unit is not really portrayed at all.
You might get to it, like Sleeping Beauty, for instance, Snow White, like it's moving to that. But
like, look at Beauty and the Beast.
Yep.
There is no mother, and Belle has no mother. Aladdin, Jasmine has no mother, and Aladdin has no parents.
Yeah.
I believe Pocahontas' mother isn't around. Her father is for sure.
Yeah.
Like Lion King,
Cinderella,
mother, they're both there in Lion King. Cinderella, stepmother. Hunchback of Notre Dame, he's an orphan. He's orphaned by his mother. He's left at the church. I'm sure there are, like, what other ones are we? Like,
even a newer one, I suppose, like Frozen. There are a unit, but the parents go away. It's
dead.
really just the two sisters.
Yep.
It's interesting that it's a family friendly kind of, the idea as a family friendly thing.
Even like, Finding Nemo, is that Disney and Pixar, or is that just Pixar? But like the dad goes out to find Nemo, right? Like there is
It might be. Yeah, I mean, this fascinating observations that one. Disney is like about, trad Disney is about like moral truths and for the family, and yet there's no God really, and there's no family.
Yeah.
And so it does this kind of
It's a very qualified family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the focus away from the family relations, I suppose.
Even like Little Mermaid, there is her mother's not around. It's just her father.
Yeah, and maybe that's because kids, kids have had enough of the parents anyway, and so there's a focus on like it's just them anyway. But it's true that the children are not usually there. I was trying to think. What's the psychology one? Inside Out. That's Disney Pixar, right?
I know it, but yeah.
Okay, so but that the family isn't. The family is not as present explicitly in the way as you'd expect it to be, given the focus on
the sort of wholesome nature of it.
Yeah.
But again, it's weird because now that I'm thinking about it, like with the same thing as God's presence or lack thereof, it doesn't strike me as
problematic
in the sense that I don't think there's an agenda behind it. Like and maybe that's the best way to explain my thought on it. With the absence of God, it doesn't seem that there's like an anti-religious, agnostic, atheistic agenda that's being foisted upon people. And the same thing with like the absence of the intact like family unit. It doesn't seem that there's an agenda that's being
and maybe that's one of the faults with current Disney or any kind of thing today. It has a sort of propagandist aspect to it.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we all expect something to have a propaganda aspect. So we all expect like, well, what is it really telling us?
Yeah.
Whereas traditional Disney was just telling stories, and that's what life was about anyway.
Yeah.
I think we have a general suspicion of anyone that's not us, basically. And we assume they must be doing something or trying to get something from us. I think that's true for Disney. And then so it ends up being this, well, look, either you are really explicit about the God stuff and everything else, or like you're really opposed to it, as opposed to just kind of taking things naturally in that way. And I think Disney at its best is, it is a mirror, maybe this is right, it's a mirror of the culture, such that back when there was the Protestant kind of American culture with good and evil and these things and redemption and finding true love and all of this, it was reflecting that. But now people want to play around with things, and they expect moral lessons to be driven down your throat, as opposed to just presented in their naturalness, even with some fantastical elements to it.
Well, what's your favorite Disney movie? If you had to pick one.
Oh man, that is a good question.
Or two. You could pick two.
Oh, I do like Aladdin, but mainly because of Jafar.
Okay.
I like Aladdin a lot, and the parrot's quite delightful.
Iago.
Yeah. I know. I have to say, I mean, Robin Williams. He's fantastic.
Genie.
The genie. Yeah. I mean, I was surprised at how much I remembered and liked Robin Hood, even though I'm not generally a fan of Robin Hood because he's breaking the law as far as I can tell on a regular basis. But there was something delightful about that early one too.
Yeah.
Your favorite?
Can I pick two?
You can.
So Lion King.
You like that, huh?
Yeah. And actually Beauty and the Beast.
I was tempted.
Really
That's a classic one. That's a good one. Yeah.
I like, as far as like Disney love songs, like Tale as Old as Time, who sings that? The British woman, and Lansbury, right? Andrea, is that her name?
That sounds right.
I think that's just like classic Disney, and like the sort of sacrifice of self in it.
Yeah. Beauty and the Beast, that is, It's funny, I don't feel, that's just they're great, and they're love stories too.
Yeah.
But there's something noble and beautiful about them. So that's great. Well, that's it. So was the best is maybe the worst, but generally a qualified. So you start out with a qualified yes, still a qualified yes, of course.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to lose Disney. You know, I feel bad because it's such an American icon. But we'll have to stop it there, folks. Please check out your own favorite Disney movies that you want. Rewatch them with the children if they're from 1990s or earlier. But while you're doing so, thanks for listening to this episode of Godsplaining. Follow us on Facebook, Platform X, Instagram, TikTok, if it's still around. Like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and please feel free to donate on Patreon. Also, look in the description links to find links to merchandise, other things, and especially upcoming events. We have one particularly. It's going to be a Disney-themed. No, it's not. It's a men's retreat, so we'll be watching Disney movies the whole time. No, we will be doing men's things. It'll be in North Carolina on August 8th through 11th. Father Patrick and myself, I will be leading it on redeeming stoicism. So please join us there. You can check out more on the website. Know of our prayers for you. Please pray for us, and we'll catch you next time on Godsplaining.
Father Bonaventure, if you had to choose between getting Warby Parker glasses, subscribing to a YouTube channel, or flossing your teeth, what would you choose?
Oof. I guess, to be honest, subscribing to a YouTube channel.
See, folks, it's not as bad as flossing your teeth or getting Warby Parker glasses. Please subscribe to Godsplaining. Cheers.